We started this council back in 2010, 7 years ago. We've grown by leaps and bounds since then. We've done around 42 events so far. We have invited over 120 speakers and panelists across the spectrum.
We're here at the Financial Policy Council Summit on AI and the intersection of biotechnology. We have an exciting list of panelists, and our Entrepreneurship Award will be presented for the month of May. We're very much looking forward to the discussions that are going to be centered around investments, bioethics, and really what the Financial Policy Council is all about, which is wealth creation and really igniting this revolution.
We have around 30 sponsors, and I would like to thank them all for sponsoring our events for the last 7 years.
So it's really exciting where technologies are moving today. You always have good and evil with new technologies. So there are thousands of conversations going on today.
So it's really remembering where you're actually coming from and also not letting that limit you to where you can be, but keeping those values, which is very interesting.
AI, what they're doing is focusing on machine learning and having machines actually come up with new solutions and products and whatnot.
This area is really exploding and it's very exciting. I think we're just on the front edge of the potential of what we can actually do with this stuff.
So what's the opportunity for investors in this space?
The amount of investments that you can make in this area is vast, and the opportunities are also vast.
Unmatched, unrivaled, because I think the potential is so great and we're just now tapping it.
As an investor or as an entrepreneur, there is certainly room for highly valued, great moral companies in this space, and lots of money to be made that can make an impact in the globe.
Entrepreneurship is being independent, self-driven, self-reliant, and the need to create different companies and different ideas and act upon them is something that I found to be core to the FPC and something that's fully embraced. And I think that it's one of the most exciting times to be an entrepreneur, to create businesses, to impact society globally, and this is an organization that I think is aligned with that mission and that vision.
You want to get somewhere in life, you have to create money, you have to create wealth, you have to educate yourself first. And this is where it starts with the National Policy Council. You educate yourself, you network with like-minded people, you start creating wealth, and then you teach and empower other people to do the same. Today we have 4 panelists. The topic is going to be about biotechnology and the intersection with AI and others. We have Katherine Bazemore, who's a founding and managing partner and CEO of Cocoon Resources. Katherine, could you please raise your hand? Omar Hamada, associate partner, also with Cocoon Resources. Omar. Dr. Viviana Amzel, in-house intellectual property counsel with Cocoon. Viviana. And Jim Rieger, partner with Cocoon. Every event, we honor an entrepreneur. We give him an award for what he has accomplished. And this time, the Entrepreneur Award of the Month is going to Derek Lunston from Scrimmage. Derek, could you please join us here?
Thank you for taking the time to listen to this talk. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. So to reinforce what Ziad says, I'm here because I believe in freedom and in the process of building oneself and one identity through the process. Through my career, I've built and started businesses in the consulting, media and advertising, training, technology, which is where my time is spent now, leading a company called Scrimmage, as well as working and supporting other entrepreneurs. Ultimately, I believe in the power of entrepreneurship as a guiding principle to continue the advancement of both the United States as well as what we're doing worldwide. There's never been a more exciting time to be an entrepreneur. There's never been a more exciting time to be alive. In spite of what you may see daily day in the media, we are on the verge of major advancements in the history of humanity. The topics that we're speaking and hearing about tonight in regards to the intersection of technology as it pertains to healthcare, technology, data, the experience of being a human being, and how those things connect to drive both wealth as well as communication and advancement is something that we've never had the opportunity to do before. The connectivity that we can do to impact billions of people's lives has never been more real than now. There's a gentleman named Naveen Jain that I know who talks about the fact that entrepreneurs are as powerful as what was superpowers back in the day. We have access to more information than the President of the United States had in the 1990s on our cellular phones. And that power and the ability to connect, the most financially valuable thing in the world right now is information. And the ability to transfer that information and to educate people worldwide on how to think and why they're doing what they're doing is so critical. All of you who are entrepreneurs or investors or big dreamers, take the time to invest your money, invest your time. It is just and is right to create wealth while also doing good. And that's the benefit that when you create enough wealth, to Ziad's point, you have the freedom to invest and work with the types of companies, the types of people, and the moral opportunities that are brought to the table. And I think that that's something that I stand for, and I know that the companies and people I work closely with stand for as well. So I'll keep my remarks short and brief. Thank you for the opportunity to share. Thank you for this award. It's really an honor.
First question I'd like to ask all of you, really. What is biotechnology? We need to understand this because this is the concept of today's discussion.
Biotechnology is a very exciting field. It's been with us developing since the 50s. So it's more than 50 years of life. It can be defined in various manners, but one way would be to use a definition that encompasses the applications of biological systems and its uses for applications to different fields. The biological systems have been in existence and been worked with for centuries. Initially, they were classified and studied in generality because there was no knowledge of the composition of the systems. But going through the stages of hunter-gatherers to the agricultural revolution, the selection of all these systems started to be applied. And we're now approaching, mid-century in the 1900s. And with the deciphering and the discovery of DNA, a whole new wealth of knowledge came into being.
How do we think about big data, social media, augmented reality, VR, AI, machine learning? What do we think about that so that we can talk about the intersection between biotechnology and this?
So I'm going to split it into two spheres.
Please.
One is big data, and the other is artificial intelligence.
Perfect.
Starting with artificial intelligence, really, that is basically humanizing machines. I mean, simplified, artificial intelligence is humanizing machines. Later, we're going to get into the bioethics of where do we draw the line between humans and machines. With that intersection, we'll get there later.
Perfect.
Big data is really the voluminous amount of data that's created on a second-by-second, day-to-day basis that using traditional computing methods, we are unable to adequately systematize it, analyze it, put it together, extract from it, et cetera. So we need other methods of computation, whether it's quantum computation or other types of deep learning types of things that we teach these machines to do to gather the information that we need from big data. So we've got big data, we've got AI, and then portions of AI are things like augmented reality, virtual reality, machine learning, things like that. And we'll delve into those a little bit more in further questions, I believe. Mm-hmm. But essentially, the simplification, AR and VR. AR is augmented reality, so we're seeing reality and perceiving reality in front of us. We have an interface that we're looking through that's getting some computerized input that gives us more information that we wouldn't otherwise have, whether it's a map or a subway system or With biotech, a patient's chart or vital signs, things like that. VR is where you basically are wearing a goggle that blinds you. You don't have any inputs from reality, and all of your senses are taken over by virtual computational inputs, from sound to vision, and these things can be so impactful. I was at Abundance 360 last year with Derek, and we were looking at some of these things. Basically, you're wearing this mask, and you walk a fine line, the ground drops out from under you, at least you think it does, and you have to walk 10 feet. People were unwilling to walk it. It was maybe a 6-inch post for 10 feet with a 100-foot drop is what your brain was interpreting, and people, out of fear, just wouldn't do it, even though they knew they were standing on solid ground. Other people would start to walk it and fall over. And it's incredible. So VR is incredibly powerful. But these are some of the applications that we see. The other thing, machine learning, is actually teaching computers through complex algorithms to take data and learn from it. It tries one thing this way, it doesn't work. Another way, it doesn't work. Finally, it figures out what works, and it's quicker and more insightful every time it learns.
Thank you, Omar. Jim, you want to add something? Or is that...
Machine learning is used in medical fields and various different fields, even in human resources fields, and how employees interact with one another in processes. So it can be used in a lot of different ways.
Katherine,
I just want to say, when we really are looking at trying to define these particular areas, you can talk to 100 people and get 100 different definitions. It's all overlapping, and people are having a hard time communicating about it. So when we talk about it today, I just like to make it as simple as possible to understand that what we have is we have what we've always had. We have data. And on top of data, we have machine learning. So we have algorithms that we're understanding what's coming out of the data, and then that's all packaged up to say, that is artificial intelligence, what we're learning from those combinations. The augmented reality, the virtual reality, those are parts that are intersected there into some of those, into the actual big data applications. It's just taking big data and presenting it through another lens, if you will. So it's not nearly as mysterious as it's made out to be.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay, we talked about biotech, we talked about artificial intelligence, augmented reality. So what are we talking about when we say the intersection between biotechnology and AI and the rest? What exactly is the intersection? Explain it in plain English, please.
So when we have biotechnology today, we're looking at molecules, we're looking at all these systems. So here's biotech, and then here are all of these mechanisms over here where we've got the AI integrating. So I'm going to give you a perfect example. So there are predictive disease databases that are using biotechnology information. They're looking at multiple views of different molecules that make up different diseases. So what we're seeing today is that by studying in biotech and creating database platforms that are trapping huge amounts of data, then we're applying the machine learning on top of it to start providing drug discovery, diagnostics discovery, because we're learning with machine learning earlier and earlier and earlier what is actually causing the diseases instead of just doing a test to see if you have the disease. So we're now intersecting all of these pieces together. And I think Omar's going to give another example specific related to the augmented reality intersection. But you can also take your social media. So today, and regulatory changes have to come because we're now starting to deliver more directly to the consumer and through social media platforms and being able to capture more data, which is what we all are enjoying. We're capturing more data directly from the consumer that's then populating the databases, that's then learning more about how the biology in human beings is operating.
Omar, you want to add?
Sure. So, when we look at the investment potential of all this, there are various areas, and someone was asking me about this at the reception outside. There's one area of drug development discovery. There's another of disease diagnosis and therapeutics. There's yet another of software development and how all this stuff interacts. So the potential is huge, and it's not just focused in one area. When we talk about AI in the clinical application as a physician, when I see a patient, primarily with like AR and VR, that's primarily just informational or training in terms of what it can do. When we look at the actual biotech that's going to affect diseases and drugs, we're going to bring in some other pieces of it. But for example, with AR, I can be in surgery and looking through Google Glass, actually see a patient's CT scan. Or there can be, some Google Glass in the OR, and without touching it, so I can maintain a sterile field, I can just wave my hand and the sensors will turn pages. And I can see, the images from a CT scan. I can go back and look at an ultrasound that was done a year ago, what have you. So there's some very powerful applications in clinical practice. But I think the actual investment potential is so much even greater when we talk about pre-diagnostics and therapeutics that we're going to get into with nanotechnology and things like that here in just a minute.
Could you please provide an example of how you're using this intersection in practical application with an investment you have in your portfolio?
I think one that is a really good example, and I alluded to it just a little bit while ago, but we're building in one of our investments a breath database platform for predictive disease. So what we are doing is we are housing many different intersections of information. One advantage that is in that particular platform, companies for years have been bringing together FDA data, NIH data, all of these huge platforms, and the data is the same message. It's as good as the data that went in. And there's still so much work to be done in regard to being able to put the data in structure and information to where you can really get good learning from it. So with our breath platform that's in a chemical analysis company, we're actually building it from the very beginning, the first time a breath platform has been built, and we're going in and taking samples that are able to store breath profiles, and then it continues to collect directly using social media from consumers. They're able to provide the information related to diseases that are going on. They are able to bring information related to odor profiles related to the diseases that have been identified. And we are developing through researchers the biomarkers that are representative of biomarkers for breath. So the molecules that represent a lung cancer or a pancreatic cancer or represent ovarian cancer, there's biomarkers every day being established. Those are being added into the platform. So as time continues, whether we use something like a pacifier that's absorbing volatile chemicals to be able to look at the breath profiles in babies, or whether it is someone chewing a piece of gum that we were highlighted on Fox News with related to cancer diagnostics, all of these data elements are going into that platform, and consumers will be able to subscribe to that and be able to give their breath. And as all of these biomarkers are coming together and starting to learn, here's the absolute picture of what cancer in stage 3 looks like. Then you're able to go back with the machine learning and go back over years of historical information, and you're able to turn around, and once a new disease profile's there, you can go rerun everything in the complete database and populate and give triggers to consumers that are in that particular database that are subscribed to let them know there's indications that there are some problems they need to check out. So earlier and earlier, the more and more data that's collected, the more and more we're going to learn to where we'll actually be able to eventually see what's changing in the breath with the compounds at a certain stage that we see the consistency to see what is consistent. So again, you're using pattern recognition, but you're able to go back because now we can actually look at spectra, do comparisons, and be able to get very, very trace level nuances that have to be considered to be able to use that kind of automated disease prediction.
May I drill down into that just a little bit? So disease processes are just that, they're disease processes. It's not that one day you don't have diabetes and the next day you do, or one day you're fine and healthy, the next day you have a massive heart attack. It's a process that's taken several years to happen. So the earlier in that process we can actually make a diagnosis and reverse the disease, the better it is for you, the longer your lifespan will be, the healthier you'll live. Same thing with cancer. Most of the time as physicians today in traditional medicine, the way we diagnose cancer is if you come to the physician and you say, you know, I've got blood in my stool, or I'm coughing up blood, or I've got this belly pain. And then we do some imaging and we find out, guess what, you've got stage 3 or stage 4 cancer. Then it's off to the races with surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, and usually the cancer wins, right? Now, if we can pre-diagnose that 3 years ahead of time, before you have a tumor, before you have any type of mass, by looking at some of these volatile chemicals that are being generated by some of these cells. And we make cancer cells every single day. But our bodies, our immune system is supposed to recognize them and kill them. But if that doesn't happen, that's when they start to take root and then develop into those masses that we don't like. So if we can pre-diagnose that 2 or 3 years ahead of time by saying, okay, we've got these circulating cells that haven't formed a mass yet, and what do we need to do to actually combat that and change our approach so we can actually get these people healthy so they don't develop the cancer that we're able to diagnose with imaging or what have you. So that's the power of this because, and I think in terms of the cost benefit to the healthcare community, it's huge. The drugs that we're using now to combat cancer and diseases, they're astronomical. The costs that are incurred with rehabilitation and surgery and treatment, the potential for this is incredible. So
also the cost of having the diagnostic in the first place compared to having a CAT scan or other different types of procedures is a lot more cost effective.
Yeah.
Each one of you obviously knows what he's talking about. He's an expert in the field, you know, with different variations. You, Omar, is differently specialized than Katherine, than Viviana, than Jim. So now you're competing here. Each one of you, you've been chosen by a family office to allocate a lot of money in this space. Now, he's going to give each one of you $100 million. Tell you, Katherine, Omar, Jim, and Viviana, separately, you're going to compete with that. Whoever wins, gets the best return in 3 years, gets another $100 million, and the rest, that's it. This is your last $100 million. So this is the opportunity of your lifetime to monetize all what you've learned for 3 years. What would you do, each one of you? I don't want to talk about early disease, late disease. How do you monetize all this expertise you have? This is the opportunity of your lifetime. What would you do, each one of you, in detail, starting with Katherine?
All right. So with $100 million, one of the things we were going to go talk about here in a moment was being to have intelligence. Mm-hmm. So I would invest about $80 million.
80%.
80% in intelligent tools to be able to apply those to make better investment
Okay, let's
decisions.
be specific. What do you mean by intelligence tools?
So I'm going to give you 2 examples. So today, there's new startups that are starting up. One of them in the area of biotechnology intersected is to be able to look at startups that are evaluating the whole asset of the patent classes.
Yes.
So there is machine learning today that is going on with the tools, specifically to go in and understand where are the IP assets being placed. What is it being, and is all the spending going on by all of those that are doing the spending? I need that kind of information so I can understand the competitive landscape to make my very targeted decisions the exact right ones.
I love it. Okay, so 80%. The rest?
The rest of that would go into some of the technologies when you go and you use tools like PitchBook, where you can turn around and do all kinds of analytics, and you better understand the keywords you're dealing with because you can get all kinds of different data.
Yeah.
But I would go in and I would really look at where the investment is going with all the different rounds and the deals, and then I would turn around and we would make some investments in that space. And we certainly would be putting some more into some of our own investments,
Of course.
like the predictive disease platforms.
Thank you very much. Excellent.
Yes.
Viviana?
I would go to the intelligence databases, some of which already exist, and some that will be developed.
Like what exactly and what percentages?
Well, one of them is Magic Number, which is the one that Katherine was talking about. It has a wealth of information about databases of all kinds, and the IP that's associated with what companies, what alliances, because it's not only the one company that will harness all the technology,
Of course.
but they work by licensing or making alliances and acquisition ultimately. And then the expertise of different people will help you in deciding in which direction to go. I wouldn't go necessarily where all the investment is at the time that I'm looking at it, but I would try to take a higher look at the entire area what I'm dealing with and decide whether there are other alternatives that could either compete with that or that would develop an entirely new field where the investment could be made.
And the rest?
And the rest, once I make the decision on where it goes, I would start investing to develop a few lines.
Have you in the past invested your own money or had skin in the game in some transactions that the ones you mentioned? I know you have, Katherine.
I have.
Oh, you have too. Okay, good. Oh, excellent. Omar.
So several years ago, we know that Google invested $50 million in 23andMe.
Of course.
The FDA shut them down, and that was for data generation with genetics. The FDA shut them down because they were getting a little bit too far on the therapeutic side. We know Theranos had a great idea, but they fell flat on their faces. What we have today, we have the information, we have the data, we have the technology. What we don't have is the ability to apply it to the masses. Dan Sullivan of Strategic Coach says, you know, the big thing in the future isn't going to be the economic disparities in culture, but it's going to be healthcare disparities based on economics. And I think that is probably true, but there's really not a need for it. I think if I had $100 million, what I would do is try to demonetize and democratize the information and the data and the technologies we have to make it applicable to the general population to help them improve their own health.
How do you do that?
So,
it's all, at the end of the day, it's all about the how.
Exactly. So I'm getting there. 50% of our health is strictly based on our lifestyle, the choices we make. 20% is based on the environment that we live in, whether it's the water we're drinking, the air we're breathing. 20% is based on our genetic profile. Some of that is modifiable based on epigenetics. Genes can be turned on and off like a light switch. Only 10% is actually based on what we do as physicians, surgery and medicine. So what the power is really giving clients, giving patients their own medical data, giving them their genome, giving them their health profiles, letting them have access so they can make good choices. Instead of thinking that, you know, my grandma and my aunt and my uncle all had diabetes, that means I'm going to have diabetes too, because all of my health is based on genetics. That's untrue. So we can educate them through this. So I'd spend $100 million developing an app, a mobile app that we can use on a phone, where patients have direct access to their entire medical record that's simplified so they can have the power of making good decisions every single day with what they eat, how they exercise, how they sleep, et cetera. And I think we'd see a revolution when it comes to our health.
Is there no such app today?
No, not a consistent one.
Not fully. Got you.
Yeah, not that can access their health records and, I mean, all the genetic profiles and everything.
Interesting.
Else. No.
There is a lot of individual apps that do a lot of those kind of things. It's the integration of all of that.
Okay, so Katherine,
that makes
this is
a
our
difference.
next project.
But that's the beauty
Katherine,
of
this is our
the
next
field.
project.
Absolutely.
I'm in.
We're on it.
Good. Sorry, Viviana?
That's the beauty of the field. It's just beginning. It's at the very beginning of the development. So there's a little thing being done here, another one here. And as it develops in different areas, there's going to be a more encompassing picture of what can be done with all these different lines of work.
Who is the Google of the healthcare world?
Google.
I thought so.
It's Google.
I thought so.
Behind the scenes, Google and IBM.
But I thought there was some specialized.
Google and IBM. And interestingly, in 2003, when Craig Venter sequenced the human genome, it would cost any one of us about $1 million to get our genome. Today, 23andMe can do it for $200.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Jim, go ahead.
This whole area is just beginning, right? So there's a lot of different options as far as investing $100 million. That's a drop in a bucket for what can really invest in this particular market. The key to all of this is data. and not all the data is clean. What we have to do is invest a lot of money, I would say at least half of it, in data collection. And having some sort of app like Omar suggested would be an awesome idea. Having, how do you collect the data, right? How do you collect the data from millions and millions of people in an inexpensive way? And that's where chewing gum or some other type of diagnostics. So I would actually put a lot of money in the technology of gathering clean data and the diagnostics to bring in the data.
I understand, but this whole thing is not intense enough. How do you screw Google? Okay? That's what I want to hear. I want to hear your passion, whether 100 or 1 billion. How do you screw them? How do you screw the big guys? I don't see this yet. Oh, you know, I'm going to spend here, I'm going to spend there, etc. Where is this killing mentality where you're going to go and screw the big boys? Tell me how you do that.
Let me address that question.
That's what I want to know.
Okay, I'm going to address that question. So
it's on video, by the way. How do you screw Google?
in the biotechnology space, the big boys are the pharmaceutical companies. And consumers today want to have a voice and they want to be a part of the drug delivery solution.
Yes.
So when you build a predictive platform and these people are starting to integrate, putting their information into that platform, and you can turn around and put a financial model underneath that allows them to share in future discovery, that's where you're getting to take care of those
Now
guys.
we're talking.
And that's what we're doing.
Now we're talking.
That's it.
Now we're talking. We talked about big investors putting money into you. Now, how do the smaller investor who wants to go into this space, you know, limited resources, but, you know, how do you sell your services? Through crowdfunding, through, you go to a venture capital firm, you go to angel investing. What's the usual round you use, Katherine?
Well, for the smaller investors, you know, you've talked about startups, and that's an area that a lot of people don't get involved in. And so, and James was going to talk about high net worth type individuals that like to play in some of these things. You've just got to diversify your portfolio. And that's the bottom line. And do some PPMs, be able to do some of that, and do some of the crowdfunding. So all of those, or you can start putting them into the financial model where you're actually discovering disease solutions and start participating in that way. All of these new financial tools are going to be unfolding because you can get straight to the consumer, and that is going to allow for new models to be able to be executed.
Awesome. It's time for your questions now. So, whoever wants to start, on this side, on that side, you can ask them any questions you want.
I'm Zaina Neshwat with Black Hawk Partners. We're a family office here in New York. Can you tell us a little bit more about the bioethics related to this particular space, especially its relevance with entrepreneurship and investing?
So that is a very complicated question, and I'm going to step on a little bit of quicksand here maybe, but hopefully not. A lot of that is dependent on our worldview. So, and I'm going to be very forthright. If we have a Judeo-Christian worldview, our bioethical dilemma is going to go one way. If we have more of a secular worldview, our bioethical dilemma may go another.
I want to hear it based on your worldview.
On my worldview. So it's still complex because I think the delineation right now, and some of this may change as we develop, right? I mean, things change as we get more and more used to certain technologies. Right now, the cure, the assisting the human body to do the things it's supposed to do through biotechnology is a safe area. When we get to enhancement of physical capabilities, when we get to adding things that we're not supposed to be able to do, like let's say inserting a bionic eye that can see the wings on a flea from 100 feet away, that's really not a human function. So we're not just helping us be more human, we're actually turning us into a part machine. So when we get to that aspect, which is maybe coming, I mean, Elon Musk 2 months ago basically warned us about the dangers of AI, and I mean, he was almost predicting a Terminator 2 type existence in the next, several decades. And I think at some point he's right. So we have to make those decisions. I don't have the answers, but we have to have some sort of idea about where are we going to draw a line, where are we going to stop. Same thing like with cloning today. Do we clone a sheep and a human? Where do we draw the line?
It's actually being done.
Yeah, it is.
So I'm going to come right off of that. And I think I'm going to give you an example. If you start really digging into some of the news in regard, for years there has already been all kinds of forums globally talking about how are we going to deal with the enhanced humans versus the non-enhanced humans. So this is not a brand new discussion. This has been picking up steam now for many years. And for example, one of the headlines just in the last 24 hours, human merger with machines will create a hybrid race of super gods, says top expert. This goes on and on. And while it may seem like it's the Avengers, Lord of the Rings, and some of these other things, I want you to understand these things are possible, and there are things that are happening already today. So when I'm in this field and we are educating investors and entrepreneurs, you better understand what your values are and where you're going to draw the line, and your clients better understand how you look at these things, because we're here to make money. There's ways to make money that's going to impact society in a positive way, and then there are ways that it can go down different doors. There's arguments for the good in every situation. There's always an argument for the good, but I would just caution investors and inventors and entrepreneurs to be thinking about how can this be turned, and then we've got to draw some lines on how to be able to protect it from going down those paths. But it's way, way out already.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you, Katherine. Thanks a lot. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Tim Kaler with Impact Analytics. I think the cancer biomarkers are fascinating, and I guess my question is, how close are we to having all of the types of cancers with biomarkers? And as for like a business model, you mentioned Theranos. I thought that was a brilliant business model. Unfortunately, their technology didn't work, but I could see something like that in a drugstore. You breathe into something that tells you if you have cancer. That would be beautiful. And the other part of this question is, will the medical field resist this? Because essentially you're taking something that costs thousands and thousands of dollars and you're reducing it to a $5 breath test.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I
Yes,
take a
go
swing
ahead,
at that?
doctor.
So that's actually a fantastic question that we were discussing at lunch today in terms of the resistance from the medical field. And some of it is profit motivated, but a lot of it is things just move so very slow. And we as physicians take hold of science, new scientific discoveries, maybe a couple of decades after they occur. The nice thing about where we are today with technology and social media and people's access to the internet is that we have democratized health information so that people are now more personally responsible for that. So we no longer have to wait to say, well, I've got to go to my doctor for this. You can go to the pharmacy and do a breathalyzer test, essentially, and then take your results to your physician, say, look, here's what I got. So I think that whole approach is now changing, where we're not so physician dependent, but we are now democratizing our health information, make it more personally applicable and customizable to the individual.
Thank you.
And in terms of all the different cancers, no, we're not anywhere close to having that out there. We have probably the major ones, I'd say, able to pre-diagnose.
There's still work to be done, and it's continuing to evolve all the time. But I think the whole part about the physician, they have got to change, and they've got to be able to start understanding that they've got to be able to interject all these different data elements into personalized medicine. They've got to be able to treat the patient a completely different way.
One more thing, I think traditional medicine, we manage chronic disease. We manage diabetes, manage hypertension, manage whatever. We also have to change our approach, and the healthcare, so there's a difference between medicine, the message, and healthcare, the business. The business mandates that we approach medicine a certain way. Most of us physicians don't really like it anymore because now we've been commoditized. But the approach really should be from management of disease to curing disease. So we can cure diabetes, cure heart disease. So you don't have to take pills anymore. You don't have to take medications anymore. And that's the goal.
Hi, my name is Brett Sirkowski from Med Science Ventures. Quick question. So, I mean, the great ideas that you've all discussed, how would you go about monetizing those ideas? Anyone?
We're doing a lot of that right now in the work that we're doing in Cocoon by investing into different technologies in this space. And so we are building, for example, a test with chewing gum for cancer biomarkers and being able to do that. And so you can sell those to consumers as a laboratory detection test before you even get all the way through the FDA, and you can start being able to also use that to segue that data into the subscription database platform. So the more the people want information to be coming to them about them. So subscriptions and overall platforms with good data from individuals, that to me is where I see the opportunities of the future.
It's huge.
My name is Joe Lutz, and I'm with the Eros Group. My question is around the data. With the challenges of all these models talking about data and ingestion of the data, how are you overcoming, or what are the challenges you face with the regulatory issues you face? And how do you address those, and where do you see the lobbying and the government coming in to help aid these solutions?
Yeah, so for example, Vanderbilt in Nashville, I'm from Nashville, and it's sort of a hidden gem of healthcare technology. Vanderbilt supposedly has the largest database, genetic database in the country, even larger than Google's, or 23andMe's. And the way they do it is when you go in for a blood test, you sign a stack of forms, and part of it is that you're releasing your genetic material for their database. And it's depersonalized and just looked at as an entire population to help us figure out, frequencies and other things of mutations and whatnot.
So no HIPAA issues with that?
Right, so there's no HIPAA issues because all personalized information has been removed. But at some point, I think we're going to need personalized data information, and that's going to be a difficult legislative mountain to move.
Absolutely.
It has to change.
Yeah, it has to.
It has to change because of the delivery channels of today and what people are demanding.
Well, who's going to fund that? The pharmas?
Pardon?
Pharmas will fund that, or who is?
They're going to resist it. I think they'll resist it.
Well, they'll resist it to some degree, but pharma is not going to stand behind and not be a part of this delivery system. They're going to have to find a way to reposition themselves. So everyone is starting to be part of this discussion. I know that I was looking at a whole presentation related to Philips Medical and using AI and being able to understand how to get it directly to the consumer. So everyone is thinking this way, and behind the scenes, and you won't see it in your patent filings right now, but there are technologies that are already being moved that way, so people are out doing the politics and being able to get someone in the White House behind helping make sure that we're being able to get these rules changed, because this is the age we live in. It is not the way it used to be, and it has to change.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Hi, Jeremy Slate. And I know Seth Godin has talked about before that for a lot of database projects or products in the current economy, a lot of times we are the end product. So I guess from an ethical standpoint, what are your thoughts on a lot of our data and things like that being sold to third-party advertisers, especially with things like Cambridge Analytica and things like that in the news?
I mean, the reality is no one wants their data sold. Everyone is wanting to be able to have more of a direct connection where they're in control of their information. But as we continue to unfold, someone was talking about today, implementing blockchain into some of this for better security and so forth. All of these technologies have to continue to develop to stay up with the pace, because things are unfolding at a tremendous pace. I was in financial institutions years ago where we dealt with encryption. And today, oh my goodness, that whole picture has evolved so far. So people have to stay on top of exactly where things are to be able to start making sure that it is being deployed in a way that your data is not going to be used.
Also there's
people will revolt.
There's tremendous market differentiation. For example, I don't really care if my data is used or sold if I'm achieving some value and benefit from it. Some people, they don't care, they're very private, so I think there's got to be something in the market that helps with that.
Hi, Dr. Anna Kazanchian, CEO of Sarmos Therapeutics. So the question is, I mean, sometimes the best way to learn is to learn from predicting something and then being wrong, and that has happened to me many times. So the question is, how does one reduce this to practice in the sense that there has to be something that comes out at the other end, because unless there is something specific that comes out, and I understand the breadth platform and everything else, but there's a company called Rieger Therapeutics that raised $900 million to develop early markers of cancer. So my concern is that there might be some disappointment down the road that will just put the kibosh on this whole area. So what's the first thing that comes out of it that will generate continued enthusiasm for the area?
Let me just address your question this way. We have had all kinds of research for so long, to your point, all right? And the problem that we've got is we need more hungry entrepreneurs that want to take that data and get it to market and solve problems, instead of just continuing studying and studying and studying. And that is one of our biggest problems. And so now we have data, it's time to apply it and learn and think out of the box in new ways, instead of going down the same old paths and the same old processes, because you're right. Everybody thought sequencing the genome was going to give us all of the answers. We've got to roll up our sleeves and start getting right to the heart of the matter and produce some products.
I love it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, guys, thanks a lot for coming. Next event is going to be on July 12th. Hope to see you here again and more. Have a fantastic evening. Thank you for your time.